Welcome guys. On this session for today, we'll be speaking about data types. So we've seen our first program, we've done our printing, we've seen how to comment, we just dealt with variables. So in other programming languages, you will realize that variables usually walk along with what we call the data types. So Python is no stranger to that. It also deals with data types. So let's just get into it and see how Python deals with data types. So data types are very important. They are there to define what kind of data should be stored inside a certain variable, right? So very important, not to be mistaken. So I'm just gonna give out a few that you must be on the lookout for. So let's say, for example, you want to store a string. A string is any character which can be combined with numbers together with special characters that can be included as well. Anything that you want, maybe it's the name of a person, it's an email, an address of a person and things like that. They should be stored in a data type called a string, right? So a string in Python is just str, right? So str allows you to store all kind of strings that you are interested in. An example of a string, so if I could just give you an example together with so we'll start with a string, right? So this will be type of a string, and then the example will be the name of the person, where you can come and say the name of the person is Tendo, right? So the only way Python is going to identify that your variable is of type string, it's if you put it within quotation. So the minute Python says quotation, it knows that that is a string. So you can also have address, where you can put more details here, which means you can include numbers. So for myself, I can say 360 Kent Avenue, and write a lot of things like Randbeck, like that 2194. So this is still a string regardless of how long it can get. So how does Python identify that this thing is a string? It knows that because you have put the quotation. So whenever you put the quotation, Python immediately identifies that this is a string. The other way you can find out if your variable is really a string will be the following. So you can go and say print the type. So you can tell it print the type of the variable you're talking about. So the type of the variable name, it will tell you what is it. So let's go see. It will say that type is a string. So it's telling you it's coming from the class string, right? So you can change even here and say I'm now looking at finding out what is the type of address, and then it will tell you it's also coming from the class string, as you see there on the output. So basically that is it on strings. Remember, there is no need for you to come and put str at the beginning of this variable. Python will do that on your behalf. It works automatically to identify the type of variable you are trying to store. So let's now go deal with other variables. You will see from here it will become easy. So that was the type of a string. We can do now other variables and data types. So the second data type that we're going to deal with is those ones that deal with numbers, right? And with numbers, you've got one for int, you also have got one for float, right? We don't have double on Python. We also have one called complex. Complex, you might not need to use it at this stage, but there could become a point where it's very important for in your programming life. So I'm just going to do example with just this two. So this will be of type int and of type float. So let's start. So if you really want to use an integer, you can easily just go and say x is equals to 3. That's it. Maybe you want to use a float, you say y, it's then equals to 5 point. That's basically it, right? Float simply means that it's a number that contains decimal digit. So which means it could be any number that you can think of that contains decimal digit. I usually want people to say there are different scenarios where you can easily pick which kind of data type are you going to use based on the project you're doing. So if you're dealing with a project where it's going to be used at a shop where they deal with numbers that usually contains decimal, right? To say this particular item is 299, 295, 275, something like that. You already anticipate that all their values will be of type float, right? But if you're dealing with an age of a person, that's very easy. You just need an int. And even here, you can easily go and say, please show me the type of a particular value I'm working with. So you can say, tell me the type of X, and then it will tell you it's coming from the type class int, and then you can change the X and say, what about Y? So Y, it will tell you we have identified Y belongs to the class float. So that is some very cool technology we can use there, you know, on Python. The last one I want to touch now is on Boolean, right? So the same with Boolean. Booleans are very easy as well. They only contain two types, which is either true or false, right? And there are different ways that you need to be careful of there. So I'm gonna come here and say we're now dealing with a Boolean. Okay, so let's see. So if I say the value is a, the variable is a, and then I come and say true, right? You must start with a capital letter. Let's see what happens if you start with a small letter. If you say false, it does not recognize that kind of value. So you must put a capital letter as you start, or an uppercase as you start, and then you can easily go now, do as we've been doing now, print the type. Want to see if it was able to identify what is the type of value we're dealing with. So the type of A, it's indeed coming from the class Boolean, and then the class the type of B, it's also coming from the type Boolean. So very important lesson there on data types, and how you can use them, and how Python is easily going to identify you know, other data types. So there are other data types like list, tuple, you know, ranges, you know, dictionaries that we can use later on, and we're gonna learn about all of these, like byte array, you know, memory view. We're gonna learn about all of these data types later on. Very easy to implement. So hopefully this lesson was very clear. If not, you can drop a comment, and I should surely get back to you in terms of clearing it out. Or if I've made a mistake, you can warn me to say there was a mistake here, so that I go and rectify that particular mistake. So thank you for attending this session. I shall see you in the next session, which we shall be speaking about more things regarding variables.